So now we're going to be looking at the other sons of Israel. So we looked quite extensively at Joseph, talked a little bit about Benjamin, but we'll get back to Benjamin. But we'll need to start looking through some of them because some of them will actually have other stories in Genesis. And some of them will have more implications for times later on, and that'll be a little bit more Benjamin. But I think a good way to do this is a speech that their father, Jacob, or Israel, had before he died. Because he was living with them for a while in Egypt. And I actually believe it said that he was in Egypt for 17 years before he died. So when he was about to die, he blessed Joseph's sons. So there's Ephraim and Manasseh. And Ephraim was the older one, Manasseh was the younger one. And in true Genesis fashion, when Israel was going to give them a blessing, he switched his hands. So his right hand went on the younger, his left hand on the older. So he was giving the younger one the greater blessing. And when you actually think about, well, who is receiving the greater blessings throughout Genesis, it's the younger children. Because Cain did not receive the blessing of God for he sinned, so it was Seth. You have of Abraham's children, Ishmael didn't receive the blessing, Isaac did. Of Jacob and Esau, Jacob was the younger one, but Jacob received the blessing. And with the 12, Joseph is second to last. But he's kind of being skipped over. But his children are receiving the blessing that he would otherwise receive. And within the children, it's the younger one who's receiving the blessing. And this is always just going to point us forward to Jesus himself, because if we're looking to, who was the first son that God made in the world? Well, it was Adam. But Adam lost the promise of God because he fell into sin. And as we'll also find with the entire lineage of Adam, all of them are repeating the failure to live up to God's promises. So only one who comes in late in time, Jesus, is able to take up the mantle of the true firstborn son, the son of promise, and actually redeem his brethren. So we find this promise given to the younger all the time in the scriptures. So Joseph has his children blessed, and then Jacob gathers all the 12 and starts blessing them. So I won't go through all the blessings. The blessings are the entirety of Genesis chapter 49. But I will go through some of them to show kind of what's going on. So in Genesis chapter 49, beginning in verse 2, it says, "Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel." So in true Hebrew poetic fashion, he's using paralleled lines. And in parallel lines, the idea of the first is compared or contrasted with the second. So he's calling himself both Jacob and Israel at the same time. Yeah. So now he's speaking to Reuben. "You are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power, turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel, for you went up onto your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it." Yeah, so now I have to get into the brothers and why the ranking birth isn't really following what we find in the New Testament for what's coming with the promises. So with Reuben, you could say that he was doing what a good older brother should do by trying to protect Joseph, at least as much as he could. But Reuben himself, he could have also been acting this way out of guilt. Because well before that time, Jacob and his children were about to settle into the promised land. They were settling in Bethel. Along the way, verse 21, thank you. Yeah, Israel moved on again and pitched his tent beyond, 22. Beyond Migdal Eder, while Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the family dynamic. So you have the 4 wives here, and you have the 2 main ones, Leah and Rachel, and then they gave their maidservants at different point in time to try and one-up the other. So what Reuben did was he wasn't going into his mother, which would be a stonable offense any other time. Well, this is also technically a stonable offense according to the book of Leviticus, but Reuben is benefiting from a time before that book was written down. But Reuben, he couldn't go to Rachel because Rachel had at that time just died in childbirth, giving birth to Benjamin. But he was going to Bilhah. So it's not that he's going against his father's favorite wife, but somebody who represented his favorite wife. And also, to be clear, this isn't Reuben going to his aunt, but his aunt's maidservant. So there's not as much incest as you might fear.
Right. It's still an offense.
Yeah, well, it's a huge offense, especially when you're considering, well, what is a household? A household should just be the husband and wife and children. So if you're violating that, if a child is actually going to remove the wife from the father, this is destroying the household. It's not just destroying one relationship, but destroying the entire household. So an incident similar to this did come up briefly in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, where St. Paul, he's writing to the Corinthians and he's admonishing the congregation for allowing a sinner, well actually I think more 2 sinners, to be in their church, in their congregation. And there's this one man who is sleeping with his mother-in-law. And Paul's saying, like, that's a horrible offense, and not even the pagans that are around you would stand up for that sin. Like, they might stand up for a lot of sin, but they won't stand for that one. So the only possible thing that you can do as the church is excommunicate them. Throw that person out. He is not welcome anymore. And he is going to be in the domain of Satan, and hopefully Satan can torment him with the guilt of his sin to the point where that man actually repents. So that's basically where Reuben is. He should be in the state of excommunication or something that warrants excommunication. Now, it seems that Reuben is still part of the household later on, so maybe forgiveness has reigned. We don't really have much more of a statement than that one verse about Reuben's indiscretion. But when, his father, Israel, is blessing him, Reuben is not seen as the firstborn anymore. He was the one who was excelling. He was the one at the beginning, but now he's not there at the first. So then you go, well, if he's not the ranking as the firstborn for terms of inheritance, well, we then have Simeon stepping up. Okay,